Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for attending today's IBM Middleware User Community Ask the Expert session. I'm Kelsey Tipsherney, and I'll be moderating our session today. Our topic is upgrading Tivoli Network Manager version 3.9 to 4.11 to 4.2. All phone lines are currently in listen-only mode. We will have a question and answer session towards the end. However, if you have a question at any time during our presentation, feel free to use the questions box that's located in the GoToWebinar dashboard panel for you there. And tomorrow we will have the recording and slides of today's presentation available on the IBM Middleware User Community website for you to access. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to download the slides and the replay from today, and that comes out tomorrow, so just stay tuned for that. All right, so now I'll go and introduce our speaker for today. We have joining us Ken Stone. He's an IBM software engineer. All right, thanks, Ken, for joining us today. I'll now turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Like Kelsey said, this is a review of the upgrade procedure from Tivoli Network Manager 3.9, 4.1, 4.11 to 4.2. If you have been to some of my previous Ask the Expert, I like to have very few slides and do a lot of demonstration and not read too much to you, but I'm going to have to read a little bit more today to you than I would like. Part of the reason is that the import-export process that goes on with the upgrade takes a long time. So when I export a configuration, import a configuration, it's just too long. So what I've done is perform that in the lab, and I'll just have it'll be a short screenshot that shows you what I was doing. So slide 2, we're going to talk about the deadline that's approaching that causes us to talk about the upgrade to 4.2. Originally, we weren't going to talk about the upgrade to 4.2, or rather the installation of 4.2, and I've put parentheses and said, well, not much. We are going to probably talk about it a little bit. This covers both the core and the GUI processes of Network Manager, and most of the slides that you're going to see are right out of the Knowledge Center. It's a little lengthy. I've just condensed it with some screenshots. I have lots of links that you can look at later when you download the PDF later. It'll make sense. You can just click some of the links that I talked about and take you right to it, to what you need to look at. Slide 3. This is the reason that we're having this, and I won't read this to you, but the key line in here for the end of support for Java 6 is this WebSphere WAS 7 support will be limited to non-Java defects. I think what this boils down to is, would 3.9 still work past this date? Yes, but you're going to have some vulnerabilities, and these are not going to be processed. The WAS group is going to look at only non-Java defects. So this will be a link that you can click later. It'll review all the products that we're talking about and give you exact end of support dates. And this is a tech note that just says end of 2018, but a click on this link will show you all the products and all the dates. Slide 4, Krishna Kodali and Paul Stroud, who are also going to be answering questions with me today. This link is a previously recorded session, Ask the Expert, where he covers the installation of 4.2. So if you haven't installed 4.2, this would be a great presentation to start with. He covers a suite of products, maybe even some configuration manager. We'll show you how to get that installed, and that would take you to a point where then you could apply these slides for the upgrade to 4.2. So the first thing in the Knowledge Center is that you need to be on 3.9 FixPack 3, 4.1 or 4.1.1 to do this. If you are at 3.9, if you're at 3.8, you should probably call us today. If you're on 3.9 FixPack 2, FixPack 1, or the original GA, you cannot follow these upgrade instructions. You would need to upgrade to FixPack 3, and then you would be able to apply the upgrade. I don't know how others feel about this. If I was at 3.9, I was at FixPack 1 or FixPack 2, I don't know that I would even, I'm not sure I would even take on the upgrade. I might look at directly to 4.2 and not use the upgrade process, which means have a side-by-side installation and maybe do it manually, a more manual process. But again, here's a link that you can click that would take you to the documentation I'm about to cover. Slide 6. So when I went to upgrade my system from 3.9 to 4.2, the first thing I noticed was I had about 70 domains in my network. I'm doing mine was an upgrade from like either FixPack 4 or FixPack 5 to 4.2. So the first question that you might think about is take a look in your database. How many domains do you have in there? Maybe you have some test domains or a development lab or something like that. You may not want to bring every domain. You don't want a script that does an import and export to bring every domain from 3.9 over. So the first thing you might want to do is let's drop domains that you don't need anymore. And by drop, I mean there's a drop domain script. If it's too big that it hangs, my 3.9 box is in an Informix database. So I actually had some problems with some larger domains, and I just start the domain without the cache files, and I bring it up, and then I drop it later when it's removed most of the topology out of the database. Do you have any custom stitchers that touch scratch topology? Scratch topology does not exist anymore in 4.2. One of the most commonly used stitchers that touches the scratch topology, and by scratch topology I mean that was the final topology in the service disco, the disco OQL process, our in-memory process for discovery is the scratch topology. That's your final stitched up topology. That doesn't exist anymore. So you might have to make some changes there. If you use the tag managed entity stitcher, the one that tags interfaces with managed status, we should take a look. If you've customized that, this is a stitcher that needs to be looked at, and we will have a link later on in this presentation specifically about managed status and the tag stitcher, so you'll get some more detailed help on that with the link later on. Do you know the supported databases in 4.2? For example, I was a Informix, and that's not a supported database on 4.2. So I had to do a new database installation. So if you're on Informix, if you're on MySQL, something like that, you're going to be changing databases. If you're DB2 or Oracle, you can still use that. There are specific versions that are supported. You may be on a version that's not supported with 4.2. So there are some links, I guess, links to previous recordings and doc links after my presentation. Paul has, I believe, some information on how to upgrade from older versions to newer versions. I know with DB2. Slide 7, so now we're starting. So the first thing here is it says with 4.2 installed. I hope that's not too big a hurdle to start this with, but in this example, I've installed 4.2 on a box that is where Netcool is the installer, and the name of the server is destination.com. So this is my 4.2, and this is my destination of where I want my 3.9 data moved to. So you can see the first command I give there, like the 5th line, I'm going to run this make export package script, and it's going to create an export package.tar file. This is on my 4.2. Haven't done anything on the 4.2 yet except installed it. There's no topology, no discovery's been run, nothing has happened yet. I've just installed 4.2, and I create this tar file, and then you see the second block there at the bottom. My other server, my source server, as it's called in the documentation, it's a root install, which doesn't matter, and I call this server NC39FP4. So this was a FixPack 4 server, and all I'm doing right there is I'm SCPing this export package tar file over to my 3.9 box. slide 8. On this box, but now I'm logging into my 3.9 box. I'm going to run this nm export script, and it references that export package core.tar, which I just moved over here from my 4.2, and it would run through and attempt to create a package of everything that's going on with my 3.9 box. So you can kind of see the output here. My domain was called scom39. It's getting network view data, some policy data, that's my polling, some other stuff. But you can see it's going to collect all this data on my 3.9 system for my core part of my installation. It finishes, it creates a PKG file called, well, I call it myexport39.pkg. It finishes, and now I just take this file and I'm going to put it back over on my, you see the third block of data there. I'm back on the destination server. I'm putting that export back over there, that PKG file. So now on my 4.2 again, I'm going to start my domain, and my domain over here is called kcoms42. I just start it, no discovery is run, and you can see at the bold at the bottom there, once the domain is started, I'm going to import that package from 3.9. At the end there, slide 10, when you do that import, it's going to ask you about entity IDs. There's more in the documentation about this, but the import of the entity IDs, if you have never run a discovery and you have no entity IDs, no entities have been put into your database yet, then you could keep the same entity IDs, and the documentation says this is a value if you use TATM or TBSM, something where we need to preserve the entity IDs. So I said no, just because we'll say that it's a brand new installation and I really haven't done it yet. But if you have, then you would have to answer yes. So, but this is only, there's more detail in the documentation, and this is just if you were running something like TATM or TBSM, where the entity IDs must stay the same. This is going to migrate the polling, and I have a link here at the bottom to go to the documentation again, but it is a value to check that when you're done, that the network views did get imported into your 4.2. And part of the reason that's significant is you may have a network view or adaptive polling, you have a poll policy that uses a network view as part of its targets, right? So we want to make sure the network views look okay in the new 4.2, and you want to make sure that the default poller is the poller which has these policies. You could have multiple pollers. You could have had the default poller, maybe a non-default poller. So there's a step-by-step detail on the migration of the poll policies. Take a look at that, but make sure that you do get, if you were just using default policies on the default poller, then just make sure that they're still there. So when we talk about the manual migration of core server files, the example that, and this comes up when you upgrade the fix packs too, right? You're going to see this in our README. There are files that get tagged and need to be looked at. There's a log file that's created. It's called the nm core files manual review.txt. It'll give you a log message. It'll say like 10 files need to be looked at or 5 files need to be looked at. This is like, I think the one that I always see is like the NC Polar Schema CFG file and the NC Home EDC Precision directory. Maybe with 4.2 we have some new options for the polar. They weren't in 3.9. So if you run this process, you had an SCOMS domain-specific NC Polar Schema file. It looks over at 4.2. It doesn't want to copy that file over. You might have some custom things there, but 4.2 has some new options that you need to look at. So this is why they call it a manual merge. You need to look at what you have set on 3.9, look at 4.2. It might just be there's a line or two that you need to add, but this is when they talk about a manual migration. The log file will tell you how many files to look at. It does it on the fixed pack upgrades. It's the same process here. You can look at the files and see which ones need to be just manually reviewed. Slide 13. Now we're going to look at, we've done the core, and now we're going to look at the GUI function here. First thing it says in the documentation is if you have a question about Web GUI or TCR, there are separate links to go to their knowledge centers to look at any specific things that you should look at before starting on our GUI review, our GUI upgrade. And this is almost the same as what we just did for the core. I'm in my destination server. Maybe it's a different server. For me, it's the same server, but maybe with 4.2 you've spread out. You've got the database on a different server. You've got the GUI processes running on its own server. The bold line there with the GUI installed, I'm going to do make export package GUI. I give it the JAS path -n. It's going to create a tar file, just like the core. I take it, the second block there of lines. Did I SCP it? Nope, I just looked at it. There's my export package. I take it, the bold line. I put this back over on my 3.9 server. On the 3.9 server, I just make sure my TIPHOME is set because we were using TIP with 3.9. Extracted in the TIPHOME directory. I'm reading slides. I hope that's okay. And so, like the core, I'm going to create a file for the GUI export. In this one, if you look at the bottom line there, you see that the final file is called data.zip. With the core, it was called a package. I just needed to, my TIP is running. I need to know my TIP username and password. I grabbed the previous tar file. I have a zip file when I'm done. This will be my whole export of my 3.9 GUI function. There's my zip file. I actually had multiple files, so I just made sure I had the right name there. I put it back over on my on the destination server, and I import it in. So I made sure that my JAS dash is running in 4.2, the bold line in the middle, NM GUI import. So there's my JAS dash SM admin login name, my password, which is visible to everyone. There's the data zip file that I just brought from 3.9. I import it. Last line there, the command completed successfully. Same as the core, there are some files, I think they're property files. You'll get a log file, where with the core they were called NM core files for review, for manual review.txt. With the GUI side, it's NM GUI files for manual review.txt. Take a look at those files, see if there's anything. Again, it'll tell you which files, the number of files, and see if there's something that you need to upgrade there, to touch. The documentation then, so we're done. And the documentation at this point kind of says some things to look out for. So for me, I thought, well, what about Objectserver, some other things? So I talked to some of the other support personnel. I talked to the Objectserver support group, and I said, what did I do with my Objectserver and all this? This should have already been installed. Do you guys have a process? And they said, yes, we do. On our Knowledge Center, we have a link. If you're on Objectserver 7.x, you need to get to 8. I think it's 1. We have a process to do this. I believe they have already had their an Ask the Expert session that's available for download, so you can see that process. I talked to the TIP group. Do you guys have anything special? We're going tip to dash. What do we need to do? And they said, we're a component of a larger product like Network Manager. Our import-export process is what you just did. I said, okay, great. That was that GUI import-export that I just did. Web GUI, there was a link in the documentation that I passed through earlier, and they have a link for their process too. So just a few of the other questions that came from the documentation that I asked around users and groups and stuff like that. LDAP, I talked to the Webgur group, the Objectserver group, and they said this is you don't have to worry about this. This is with LDAP, you're pointing to the same LDAP host as before. With the Objectserver, everything gets ported over. All of the users come with it. That's not something that you have to worry about with Network Manager. They did make mention of the DLA in the documentation, and I just wanted to point that out. This is my 3.9 installation, and I know I've talked to, it's purple, I hope everybody can see that okay. I know I've talked to a lot of people about some of these SQL files before. You export your DLA and you go, how come this 3COM device, the FMS boom, is a computer system? That should be something else, right? So with 3.9, this file was of this size and had some number of descriptions in it, and with 4.2 it gets larger. So if you edited some of these SQL files, specifically something like the populate device function SQL for the DLA, then you would need to take a look at this in 4.2, because you're going to get a bigger, better file in 4.2, but it might not have maybe you had one specific change where something was a router or a switch or something like that. So take a look at that. So at the we're pretty much at the end of me talking, but I've got some links here in my appendix for, did you have some custom tables in 3.9? Do they need to be in 4.2? That's a link. I believe that's a DW answer. There is a previous presentation on upgrading to 4.2 from older versions. I think this dates back to 3.8. I think this is Krishna's 3.8 presentation, which gives you some of the benefits of going to 4.2. This is a link for that reference I made to the custom stitchers in 3.9. So it's most likely, we're talking about the scratch topology table from the tag managed entities. There could be other ones, but this link will help you with those changes. And then I did mention, I think this is Paul's, a link to his upgrading the DB2 versions. We have something there. I just have a couple of final little appendix type slides that were originally in the beginning of my presentation, but I moved them to the end. So sometimes I hear someone say, I'm on 3.9. It was installed years ago by somebody, and I have no idea if I have a custom table or not in my database. So this was my Informix. How would I know if I had made custom changes years ago? I would need these tables in my database in 4.2. So there's actually a script that I ran on my NC39, my FixPack 4 box, just to show me some differences. And when I look at this, some of these tables you might recognize as these were added with FixPacks for like the aggregation domain and domain adjacencies. But I've got one here called My Custom Table. Well, that to me looks like a custom table that I added. So this might be something I need to look into. This is probably a table that I need to have added in my new database that I set up in 4.2. My last slide. If you have not installed 4.2 yet and you're setting up a server for Christmas, start with the Prerequisite Checker. Go to Fix Central and download this tar file and run this against your server soon, today. And it'll show you whether you have the right name, the right amount of memory, do you have the storage, the space, the ports open. It does a check for you so that you don't have to do an installation of 4.2 in a hurry and it doesn't work and we kind of don't know why. This is what the prerequisite checker is for, is to look at all of the server properties that you need before you even try the installation. So do that if you haven't installed 4.2. That, I don't have a the end slide. Oh, there it is, the end, click to exit. Any questions? And with Christian on the call and Paul on the call, I think if you had a question about, even about the installation, I think we'd be able to try to point you in the right direction.
Okay, so now we'll open it up for questions. If anyone has a question, feel free to use the questions box that's located in your dashboard panel.
Okay.
Paul, can you take that question on the DB2?
I don't think DB2 Express is supported. I think it has to be the enterprise version support too. Let me check the back real quick.
I can. I lost my question. This is the link in the presentation to the supported databases with 4.2. I didn't see the question, but
yep, it's not in that list.
Yeah, the question is DB2 Express, and I don't believe that's a supported platform. I know it hasn't been tested. It's definitely not listed.
yeah, Paul, you're a little hard to understand, I think.
Yeah, it's probably my headset. Yeah, the only ones we have on there are 10.1 enterprise server, 10.5 workgroup, basically every enterprise server edition, and then 10.5 workgroup server edition. So I would not consider that a supported database.
Okay. On the DB2, one last comment is 4.2 requires a table level partitioning. I would advise you go with the latest and greatest 11.1 with the latest fix pack to avoid any hiccups, existing known bugs or whatsoever. Even if you are on the older versions like a 10.1, even though it is supported, I would suggest you go to the latest. The upgrade process is pretty flexible for the DB2. We have a couple of more questions. The next question is, will the export-import process capture items like custom map icons? That's a good question. Ken, do you know?
I don't. Is that in the tip? I mean, if it's in the TIPHOME directory, we can look into that. I don't know whether that may be something specific to TIP. I don't know that it was a custom map icon from Network Manager. Yeah, it would have to be. It would have to be a TIP one.
I think we can review that question answer offline to the gentleman who asked.
Okay.
Yep. The next question is, do we have to create the topology DB before installing the core? Yes, yeah. I think if you look at one of the link Ken pointed that has the details of the procedure, that's very handy to go through step-by-step installations.
DB scripts are now an installable entity so that you can install them anywhere you need to, or install them and then you can create the database before you install the rest of the product. You don't have to install core any longer to get the DB script.
Yeah, it's just much easier with Installation Manager. It's just like installing another component. You just kind of check the box and it will apply it. It's pretty simple. But yes, you do have to create that database, the topology database.
Okay, one last comment I want to make is, so if you're on 3.9, if you have multiple domains, 3.9 being a 32-bit platform and 4.2 is 64-bit, if you have multiple domains, for the reason being 32-bit limit is a limitation, you can club them into one domain in 4.2 as long as you're okay with other restrictions, such as, you will not have fast discovery in a couple of hours if you club all domains into one. If your network is static, it don't have too many dynamic changes, you may be okay with the clubbing all the domains. If your topology need to be up to date on daily basis, if your domain is, the number of domains are like 15, clubbing all of them into one may not be ideal. So you may have to go with several domains, if not 15, like 3 or 4. That is something to consider for large customers.
Would you say it would be better if somebody had, say, 5 domains? The import-export is going to pull all 5 domains. Then you're going to have 5 on the destination server. Would you say that's the best way? And then once it's on 4.2 with 5 domains, then you should think about a consolidation or not, whatever.
I think that's the best approach. So you know that everything is back in 4.2, then you can club them together.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Kelsey, I don't see any more questions. And we have one follow-up question on the map icons. We'll do that offline.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes today's session then. Thanks everyone for attending. And we will have the recording and slides available tomorrow for download, so stay tuned for a follow-up email with a link that goes out for the download tomorrow. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.